Hey guys, this is MoglyphFX aka Frameworks. I'm so glad to introduce you the version 3 of my MoglyphFX toolset, a really powerful procedural glyph cloning and animation system for After Effects. This new version 3 is packed with a lot of new features, improvements and bug fixes. Some of these new features are pretty advanced, so I need to explain as deeply as possible the possibilities and how to deal with them. And I apologize for the long duration of the tutorial. I know you guys need to learn and use the new features as quickly as possible, so don't forget that you can always at any point go to the aescripts.com website in order to jump from section to section thanks to the clickable time-coded sections under each video, like this, for example. This video that I am currently recording isn't on this screen yet, because of course I'm recording it right now, but you'll find this what's new in version 3 full overview video at the very bottom of this video page here. So, here is a quick reminder of how you install or reinstall the product. So you just have to log in on your aescripts.com account, and once it's down, you just click on your name here. And in the left side, you'll find the My Downloads and Licenses section. Click on it and you'll retrieve all your purchased products. Just find the Moglyph row, MoglyphFX row, and at the very right of this row, you'll find a download button. Click on it and click on the very latest version of the product, which is at the moment the 3.0 version. So click on it to download it on your hard drive, and once it is down, you'll end up with exactly this zip folder, and just unzip it. And inside, you'll find exactly this. So how to install it? First, you need to go inside the fonts folder, and in the subfolder, just go inside and install all the fonts contained in these subfolders. In the Moglyph new fonts folder, you'll find only the newest fonts, and in this case it's the 3.0 version, so you'll find only the C Fibonacci and the futuristic HUD TTF fonts. So just install them on your system just as you will do it normally, just by double clicking the fonts and install them. Okay, so make sure to do this for both these new fonts, and in your Moglyph older fonts, go inside these fonts too and install them as well. You have to do so only if you have not installed these previously delivered fonts, because all of these were in initial releases and updates from before. So if you are a version 2 user, you just don't need to do this step. Okay, you just have to only install the new fonts. But for any new user, please go inside each font and install all the fonts. So the second step is to just copy both the Moglyph assets and the MoglyphFX GSX bin file. Okay, just copy them. Okay, and go inside your application folder and find your Adobe After Effects application folder. And in the scripts folder, you'll find a script UI panels folder, and paste them both here. I've already done that before, of course, so as you can see, I've already this Moglyph assets folder and the MoglyphFX GSX bin file right there, and be sure to paste them here exactly in the script UI panels. And as you can see, I have another folder called Moglyph Custom Assets, and this is because I am a version 2 user And for anybody that had already purchased and used Moglyph version 2, chances are that you have created your own custom font with the help of the awesome custom font creator assistant that I've introduced in the version 2. And in this case, you should have this folder called Moglyph custom font, custom assets, sorry. Please do not remove it, do not touch this folder, because if you do so, you would probably lose all your custom fonts. So it will be a nightmare to find them, and I can't send them back to you. So be really careful with this. Do not touch to this folder if you have created one. Okay, so for any new user, you just have both these two guys here that are here. And once you have done all that, just launch After Effects. And once you have restarted After Effects, you'll find the, sorry, I have to update my layout here. Okay, so this is the normal layout. And as you can see in the window menu, you'll find all your script UI panels, and just launch the MoglyphFX JSX bin here. Click on it. And if you are new to MoglyphFX, you will be prompted to paste your serial number. And just as a reminder, if you do not know aescripts that good, so I will re-show you how to retrieve this serial number. So again, on your aescript account, once you have been logged in, you'll find your, in my downloads and licenses, in the table, in the MoglyphFX row, you'll retrieve your serial number right there. Okay, so just copy it from there, and when you are asked to paste it in the modal window that is appearing, paste it there and validate by clicking OK, and you should end up with exactly this same Moglyph UI panel. And once you have the panel, just like any script UI panel, you can drag and drop the panel anywhere in your layout. And I love to have it right there on the right side of my composition. So I will stay with this, and I will continue the tutorial with the next step. So, as you can see, there are some changes in the UI. Not that much, but there are some new guys here. You have a nice new post effects in the Generate tab. A new guy called Fibonacci Cloner, but I have to tell you something really important before anything else and before continuing. This is that this new Fibonacci Cloner won't appear if you are not in After Effects CC 2020 version or later. So if you are in previous versions of After Effects, you will not be able to just see it, okay? You will stay with the five basic initial cloner types. So this new guy here uses a lot of new expressions that have been introduced in 2020. So it's not compatible with with other versions prior to 2020. So be sure to mind your purchase if you really want to use this nice new feature, and if you are not in 2020 version, okay? Because it won't be compatible otherwise. Except for these exceptions, you will be able to use all the other new things. So post effects will be available for anybody. In the animate tab, you have nothing really new except this new panel here, which wasn't there before, and I've just reorganized a bit the things because I think that whichever option has to deal with the effector and the specificities of how an effector works have to be placed before, just like in Cinema 4D and in the pseudo effect that appears in my effectors. So this is why I've put it right there. And the parameters are in the middle, and the fall-off options are at the end of the pseudo effects for every effector. So it's, for me, more logical in this order. So don't be confused. This is just reordering that is not that complicated to figure out. But yeah, this panel here is new, and all the other things are already existing in the version 2 of MoglyphFX. Okay, so I strongly advise you, if you do not understand this option here, which is a way to be able to use the checked or unchecked options from the help math panel, and these options here, which are about the fall-off, to watch again the version 2 tutorial, because I've talked about that a lot in previous tutorials. So I will just talk about this guy here in a dedicated section in this 3.0 tutorial. And in the animate tab, there are two effectors that have been revamped. Especially the delay effector is now really way more powerful than before, so there is a dedicated section to that as well. And the random effector has got a new little addition, which is the wiggle mode, which can be loopable, which is a little addition, but it's pretty nice to have it. So there is a dedicated section of the tutorial for that as well. And in the help math panel, I've just reorganized things a bit too, because now the FX parameters, since it deals with the parameters from the effectors, it's working with effectors as well. So I found it more logical to have it at the top of this section. And I prefer to end the product UI with the info and listens button. So I've just reordered things a bit, and there were two new guys in the buttons. So you have now the font request button and the change settings button. Okay, you didn't have both these buttons previously, so I will talk about them in dedicated sections at the end of the tutorial. Before showing what Fibonacci Cloner does in After Effects, I need to explain you a bit what the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio are. So Fibonacci sequence has been invented by the same named mathematician, and it's just a nice sequence of numbers that is obtained by adding the two previous numbers in the sequence. So you have 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and 21 as the first results in this Fibonacci sequence. And once you divide each number in this Fibonacci sequence by its following number in the same sequence, you'll obtain another number that is really famous, and that is called phi. And phi, if you see what phi is about, when you have a phi, this ratio inside a full circle, you obtain the average of 137.5 degrees approximately. So it's called the golden angle. The golden angle is just the section you see here. And if you do so a little more times in a sequenced way, you can distribute some points in the space with a distribution that is really remarkable. Okay, and in the nature you can see such a distribution. As you can see, this is another drawing that shows such a distribution with more iterations, and you obtain this kind of pattern, which is mesmerizing and really cool. And this pattern can be seen in nature, just like in a few kinds of plants, and in sunflowers, for example, and in pines, for example. Okay, so this is really cool, and as you can see, it can have various uses. Sorry. So now that you understand the basics behind the Fibonacci sequence and the golden angle, let's dive into After Effects. So again, this is made possible because we are, as you can see, Fibonacci Cloner is here in the panel, just because we are in After Effects 2020 version and later. Okay, you won't have it if you are in previous versions. Again, you have been warned. So how do I apply this? Well, just create a new composition. So I will stay with the square one. Okay, let's have short duration, and let's just click on this new guy here. And as you can see, you instantly have this nice same pattern. I have to warn you about something I've forgotten to explain, so I will remove it, for example, for the moment. If you have your project with the project settings set in the expressions to be the legacy extend script expression engine, like this, you will have a warning message. Okay, so if I try to do so, I've got this alert message that tells me to change for the JavaScript engine instead. So I will click on OK, and it instantly opens the correct project settings for me, and you just have to dive into the expression tab and change the expressions engine not to legacy instance script but to JavaScript. So to do so, okay, you can apply the Fibonacci cloner. Okay, so let me explain you what are the options. So I will click on it, and as you can see, it comes with a pseudo effect, just like the other kind of cloners. And in the object, I will find various options. I will try to be as detailed as possible. So as for any other kind of cloner, you'll find firstly how the clones will be distributed if you have multiple shapes. So to explain that, I will add several shapes to my cloner. So how do I do that? I will click on my Fibonacci cloner, and I will add new glyph. I will choose, for example, a square, which remains green, and I will change the color for the second one, for example, and I will choose a nice pink here. And by the way, this is a new addition to MoglyphFX version 3. Now you have a nice Adobe color picker for any color settings, which is pretty great. So I will choose this pink here, and I will choose a nice round shape, circle. And as you can see, you have now, so let me mask the layer controls, and you have now both the shapes. You have the pink circle and the green square. And as you can see, there is a pseudo effect dedicated to each of these new shape. Okay, so you have the first one, which is the green square, and the second glyph, which is the pink circle. So what this option clones iterate means is that if you change the count here to be really less, okay, and if you change the spiral here. Let me explain you a bit. You have this kind of order, which tells you that each clone will be cycled through this list of available glyphs. So the first one is the first here, then you have the second one, and so on. Okay, you retrieve what we call an iterate mode of clones. But if you choose the other option, which is randomize, as you can see, there are now several pink circles, and there isn't any ordered, sequenced order at all. This is completely randomized. So I can now play with the seed, and as you can see, it will distribute in a random way your clones. Okay. So let me reset the options here, and I will change the color. Okay. So now, I don't need to see this glyph anymore. Let's just leave them here. Okay, this is for the iterate and random options. The count, of course, gives you the ability to change how many clones you have in your Fibonacci sequence, and you can go up to 1,000 clones, which is pretty cool. It's pretty easy to handle for After Effects, but it's manageable. Okay, so you can create really interesting patterns with this. Okay, I will leave it to something like 100. And you have the spiral golden angle just below, which is basically the exact same number I've shown you just before by the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio. So this is what is called the golden angle. And of course, I advise you to leave that at this exact same value, because this is the value that allows you to have this perfect, nice distribution of the clones. But yeah, you are about able to change this value. So if I type 0, for example, I have a row made of your clones, right? And if I begin to play with the angle, you can see what it does. It's creating a nice spiral pattern. Okay, so we can create really interesting designs just by playing with this angle. Okay, so I will undo this just to retrieve the value here. If you have messed up with this value and don't know exactly with this value, you can at any time just reset the Moglyph Cloner effect. Okay, the spiral bias curve is really cool. As you can see, it is animated, and if you select your cloner and type U on your keyboard, you can see that there is exactly 2 keyframes. The first keyframe is the spiral bias curve at 0, and the last keyframe is at 1. And if you see what it does in the graph editor, like this, be sure to be in the value graph, not the speed graph. So you can see that you should have this diagonal straight shape here by default. And this is thanks to this straight linear interpolation between these two values that you have this perfectly organized pattern. But you can play with this to be really more interesting. So let me show you. If you take these 2 keyframes and if you easy ease them just by doing so, okay, I've just easy eased them, you can now play with tangents and obtain a really different result. As you can see, you can do something like this, for example. In this way, you have something that is pretty exponential, and in the other way, you can have something that is kind of like a spherical shape, right? You have more clones on the periphery and you have less clones in the center, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I will just leave it as it was before. And yeah, you can, of course, create more intermediate points if you want to. So I don't know why you guys would want to do this, but it's still possible. Okay, so I will just undo this for the moment, and I will just linear them just by re-clicking with Command click on it. Okay, so here it is. And the option below called Center at Walls Downsizing, it's at 100% by default. It means that the clones at the center are almost invisible because they are downsizing to almost 0% in scale. But if you do not want to resize them at the center, you can reduce this value to retrieve the normal scale of your clones. So if I have 0 here, as you can see, each clone is now the exact same size, right? So I like to have it to 100 because I find it more interesting visually. But yeah, we can play with this value from 0 to 100. You have an invert and downsizing effect. That is a checkbox that you can tick on if you prefer to have the clones to be bigger at the center and smaller at the outwards and the peripheral of the radius. So if I click on it and tick that on, as you can see, it does that, which is pretty interesting too. It can be useful in some cases as well. So by default, this is off. There is another option that is called normalize clones size. And this is because Fibonacci is uses a rather high number of clones. So the count is usually bigger than the normal average of the other types of cloners. So if you have a lot of clones at the normal size, it will be really too big for this pattern here. Let me show you what it does if I uncheck this option. Okay, this is what you will obtain if you do not have this option. You can admit that it's way too big for such a kind of distribution. This is why I've added this option here. So usually if I have a high number of clones, count of clones, I tick that on, but just do as you want, okay? So if you let this one ticked off, you'll retrieve the exact same scale that is 100 by 100 by default for each glyph, right? So I will tick that on, and I will let that off for the moment, just to demonstrate this last option. Sorry, align clones does exactly what it says. So just in order to have something more interesting to see, I will just play with different values of glyphs for each shape. So something like this, for example. And as you can see, if I uncheck this align clones here, each clones will be parallel to each other, which can be useful if you want to have, let's say, a mathematical symbol to be readable, or if you want to create some kind of carousel, well, you name it, okay? So in this case, be careful, because if you uncheck that, depending of the count of clones here, as you can see, the rotation won't be always the one you want, right? So if you want to have something really straight and nice, you just have to trail down the transform subgroup here and just play with the rotation Z. Okay, so I will try to eyeball it, and yeah, now I have something that is more pleasable and more straight. Okay, just by having played with the rotation Z. As a reminder, the subgroup here is available for the subgroup called transform, is available for any kind of cloner and allows you to transform all your clones at the same time, right? So if you play with the position Y, you can change the center of the ring, which can be nice too and is animatable. And yeah, you can still play with the scale, non-uniform scale for each axis. And if you are in the 3D layer, you can play with the rotation X and Y as well, and you can change the fill color and the stroke thickness as well. So this is it for the Moglyph Cloner. Let me show you now a really brief example of what you can do as a concrete example. So I will redo it just from scratch. And just for the demonstration, I want to show you a new font that is called Fibonacci, which is pretty great because it has been made especially for the Fibonacci Cloner, and it's made of a few nice flourish and plants and natural elements. So I will choose this one instead this time, and I will click on this one. Again, it creates instantly a Fibonacci Cloner. I will click on it and I will add a new glyph, and this is the new Fibonacci Cloner. As you can see, there are some nice petals, some nice leaves, and other flourish and vegetation and plants elements. And I want to use exactly, let's say actually this one. Okay, I want to create like a kind of a dandelion. Okay, I will choose this one because this is a dandelion seed. And as you can see, this is the glyph number 90. And if I count down to this one, 90, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there is exactly 6 steps until the other kind of seeds. It is important for the following steps. So I will click on this one. And as you can see, let me show you better. It has cloned this nice seed. I will go to the object. I will have a smaller count. I will uncheck the normalized clones because there weren't that much count here. I will make them white. Okay, and I will reduce the max radius. Oh, I don't know if I've shown that, the spiral max radius. Of course, it will drive the radius of the spiral. Okay, so I will leave it at 200, for example. And now I will just twirl down the text here, and you'll find the cloner Fibonacci. And I've just had it as a comment. Feel free to add other properties because, well, you can add whichever property you want. By default, it just affects the scale and the position. But what if I added something new to it? So let me explain you. I will select this, I will go to add property, and I will just change the character offset here, character offset. And I will just play with this offset here. And as you can see in the add new glyph, again, I've started my shape with this one, and I will down counting until this one. Okay, so I will put -6 to exactly have this. Actually, let's put 0 at the center downsizing here. And yeah, you have a nice kind of dandelion. This is not the end of what I wanted to do. So let's twirl up this transform. I do not need this one anymore. And just by clicking on this and typing U, I will just again make them easy ease, sorry. And I will just do what I've done before. I will just try to do something that looks like a sphere. And yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. And look at that. It's almost like you had a spherical shape with a dandelion. And what is nice with this shape is that you almost have a full turn of the dandelion seed here, for example. Okay, so you have this kind of perspective and 3D stylish style with it, so it's pretty cool. And of course, at any moment, you can turn on the, you can increase the count to have something more interesting, for example. And yeah, this is a really cool example of what you can do with this new Fibonacci cloner. And just to finalize this new Fibonacci cloner and Fibonacci font, let me show you a few other glyphs that are contained in this Fibonacci. So you have mainly some variations of a circle and of diamonds, which is pretty great to achieve some nice effects with the Fibonacci uniform distributions. And you have some leaves, some flower petals, and you have these dandelion seeds. And lastly, you have some mathematical symbols like, of course, the phi number here. So it's really nice if you want to animate some mathematical graphics. So this is it for the Fibonacci cloner. Hope you like it as much as I do, guys. PostFX is a brand new wall group inside the Generate tab. And it's a pretty cool tool set that allows you to apply some really cool effects with just one click. So let me show you first the symmetry effects. As you can see, if you go over each button, you have a little description. And if you alt-click on any button of the UI, you have a nice description as well. So symmetry is the first one. And yeah, let me show you how it works. So first I will create a new cloner. Yes, I want this to be like that, and I want to apply a kind of, let's say, Fibonacci font, and I will create kind of a plant leaf, for example, this nice one here. Okay, and I will just go over there, first step transform. I just don't want to play with the position X, and I will click on this one. I will turn the plants just like that. Okay, and as you can see, the anchor point here is centered on the glyph, and this is not really what I want right now. So I will just play with the transform in the glyph and play with the let's say something like this, with the anchor point here on both axes, just like that. Okay, I want to match the base of the leaf. Okay, great. So I have something like this, and if I play with the rotation, I have that. Okay, so I will reduce the position Y, and I will add a few more clones. Okay, great. If I want to rescale the latest one and in a sequential way, I just, since this is a linear cloner, right? I've clicked on this one. So I can go over the per step transform, drill down these options, and I can rescale each glyph here, one by one with this value here. Okay, and I will, yeah, something like that. Okay, so as you can see, yeah, this is perfect. I just want kind of the half of the plant. Okay, so now that I've done that, I can just select my cloner and just click on this guy here. As you can see, if I let the cursor over the button, it tells me that if I just click on that, it will do an horizontal symmetry, which is great in my case. But if I want to make a vertical one, I can shift click on this, or shift alt click to apply both the horizontal and vertical symmetry. So at the moment, I just want an horizontal symmetry. So just select your cloner and click on this. and boom, you have just create a perfect symmetry. And what's cool about this is that this is just some mirror native After Effects effects. So this is compatible with any version of After Effects, and they are linked with expressions to a cool pseudo effect called symmetry effects. And what's great about this is that you can still position your layer anywhere, and the symmetry axis will follow your layer. And if you had the leaves in the other side, you could have wanted to change and to flip the horizontal symmetry. In this case, you would go inside your symmetry effects and just flip horizontal symmetry. Just click on this and the symmetry will flip, right? In my case, it won't work because my design isn't meant to be in the other way. But if you need so, you can check this, okay? And you can apply the vertical symmetry as well by just clicking the corresponding checkbox here. And as you can see, it will make a symmetry, a vertical symmetry, but it's based on the anchor point of the layer. So since my anchor point is here, I have to play with the anchor point, okay? And if I now click on Activate Vertical Symmetry, as you can see, it will do the symmetry as expected, depending on the anchor point. And in this case, as you can see, it doesn't do what I wanted exactly. I wanted the biggest part here and the smallest here. So I can, like for the horizontal, I can just flip vertical symmetry by checking this option here. Okay, perfect. So you now know how the symmetry works. And yeah, I did a symmetry center here that you can use to offset the position of your symmetry axis. So this is pretty cool too. This is it for the symmetry effects. It's really cool, really simple to use. And of course you can use it on anything you want, not just MoglyphFX cloners, but you can use this in with the footage, your vector drawings, anything. Okay, and same for the other post effects. Great. The next one is called Repeatile. This is really a famous effect among motion designers. So let me show you what it does. And to show you that, I will just create a text, a basic text. Okay. And this is really, I will make it as simple as possible. So, okay, I will just center it. And yeah, this is just simple, but yeah, perfect. And just by clicking on this button, you will have your Repeatile effect, which is pretty cool. Again, this is just a one-click button, so it's cool to have that in your layout in After Effects, thanks to MoglyphFX. If you want to add some borders to have some room and some gap with each iteration, you won't be able to do that just by leaving the text layer or your vector design as it is. Okay, just so in order to do so, let me show you how to do that. So I will undo that. Okay, and it will remove my Repeatile effects. So I will pre-compose this guy. Okay, and I will make sure that the pre-composition have the bounding box here that fits the gap I need. Okay, so I will, for example, do something like that. Okay, something like this. Okay, perfect. So I think this is what I want. Yeah, I will center it. Okay, perfect. And it's too big in this dimension here. Okay, great. So if I go over my precomposition. In my main comp here, as you can see, the pre-comp size is smaller than my comp size. And now if I reapply the repeatile effect, I've got the gap I want, which is pretty cool. So again, this is a native After Effects feature, the repeatile effect. So you can, of course, choose some other tiling options like unfold, for example, or turn, or yeah, whichever style you want. And the cool thing is that I've automatically applied the correct values here in order for you to have the repeatile go cover the whole composition dimensions, right? So you don't even need to apply these values, because by default, if you do not have this option, it will be you to who will be bound to enter the values, because by default this is 0, right? By default it's like that. Yeah, you don't need to do so thanks to my tool here. Okay, this is it for the repeatile. Really simple to understand. And the next one is called kaleidoscope. Again, this is a native effect, but let me show you how to apply this to your design. So again, I will create my text layer just as I have done before. Okay, so this is text layer, and this is a bit different from the other repeatile option, because in order for you to really work well with a kaleidoscope, you'll have to pre-compose it, but to have the same dimensions as your main composition. So let me show you. The text or your design has to be pre-composed. Sorry. Yep. And this time I will move all the attributes, and I have let the exact same size of the comp, which is what I need in this case. And now if I select it and apply the kaleidoscope effects, now it will work perfectly. And it does something pretty interesting and cool. You just have to play with the size to have less or more copies of your designs. And the center here will allow you to have less or more of your design, as you can see. So if I play with this center here, I can retrieve some letters of my text layer. As you can see, you can distinguish the X and the E in the design here. You can animate this, okay? And you can play with the rotation, which gives you some nice mesmerizing pattern animations. And you have different options like wheel, fish, head, canvas, dial cross, etc. So don't hesitate to taste them all. And yeah, this is it for the kaleidoscope effects. Pretty simple to understand and pretty efficient to apply. Okay, the next one is called polar coordinates. Again, this is a native effect inside After Effects. So let me show you in which cases it could be useful. So for this sake, I will create just a honeycomb cloner, and I will select the basic geometry, and I will just add a simple square shape. Okay, perfect. And just by doing so, if I now apply in animate, if I apply a random effector, just like this, and if I go to the effector and just uncheck the link dimensions, and if I go to parameters, transform, and play with the scale X, as you can see, you have a nice wiggling animation. Okay, so this is basic stuff, but now just take a look at what happens once I click on this cloner and once I go to Generate tab and apply the polar coordinates effect. Yeah, you have something like this, which is pretty cool. And if you want a full circle, you just have to have your clones go until the the limits of your composition here. So to do so, you just have, since this is a honeycomb cloner, you can go to your Moglyph cloner and play with the gap and even add some more glyphs, for example, something like this and something like this. And as you can see, some of the clones are bigger than the composition size, which is great because now if I apply the polar coordinates FX, you have now a full circle with a really nice and automatically animated graphics. And yeah, it is pretty nice, as you can see. And by the way, this is a little addition, but the wiggle mod that I've just added in the random effector in this version 3 will loop depending of your comb duration. So as you can see, this is a perfectly looping animation. So this is pretty cool. And again, this is made possible thanks to the polar coordinates FX. Okay, great. This is almost the end of this post effects section. The last one that I wanted to show you is called the Metable FX. This is the latest in the row, and this is a really interesting one as well. And to demonstrate this one, I will just create a simple, let's choose, for example, let's stay with the basic geometry and click on the radial cloner, and I will add a simple circle. And yeah, really simple to create, really simple to understand. I will hide the layer controls, and I will make the ring radius way smaller to 0, for example, and I will add with the animate tab, I will just add a delay, and by default it will just make the clones pop up on the y-axis, which is pretty nice. I love that. Okay, cool. And just by playing with the value here in the transform of the delay effector, I can do something more visible. Yeah, this is cool. And I will type U on my keyboard and go a little bit later and copy and paste the 2 keyframes of the effector delay animation property, and I will just invert the order of the keyframes, and now I have this kind of animations. So I will do something like this, and okay, I will ease the in, and this is pretty cool. Okay, so really simple animation. I will just reduce the size a bit of the comb duration, and yeah, this is what I want. So I have this nice animation here, which can be loopable, and now what I'm gonna do is just to twirl up all these guys here. I will just select my radial cloner, go to the regenerate tab, and click on the Metable FX. And once you do that, as you can see, nothing seems to have changed, but let's see what happens. Yeah, you have now a really cool blobby animation. As you can see, you have this nice kind of metables here that is made possible thanks to the new metable options. And it's creating for you a few native effects like the box blur and the CC threshold in its alpha channel. So don't touch them, but you have a nice pseudo effect to control them. So if I want to have a more visible effect, a more blobby animation, I can just twirl down these metable effects here, play with the blobbiness, and by default this is on 10, but I can increase this value if I want something more liquid, for example. So if I do so, let's increase it to 30, for example. But as you can see, if I uncheck this, my design, my original design seems to become a bit smaller, so I don't want to do that. So in this case, You can play with the shrink grow parameter here. That is just a slider. So if I want to increase the area, the visible area of my shape, I can just do something like that. And if I do so, I will try to keep, this is it. I have increased the blobbiness, and I have played with the shrinking grow slider, and now I have something a little bit more liquid, and I've maintained the overall scale of my original design, so it's pretty cool. And yeah, this is pretty nice. Really cool one-click metable effects. And you have something to keep in mind with the metable, because if you apply some colors to your design, you will just have a blurry blending between the clones, the colors of the clones. So let me show you that. If I choose my MoglyphFX Cloner, animate just random here, I have just added an effector random, and if I go to the parameters and I don't want the scale to be affected, you have now a change in the color, a random change in the color. So if I play here, you have now a really cool animation. But as you can see, the color will blend depending on the blobbiness, which drives the box blur here. So if you want a more blurry blending between the colors, you can even go further in the blobbiness here. Okay, and now you can see that I've blended the colors even more, but you have, of course, to play with the shrink and grow slider to compensate the blobbiness value here. And yeah, this is pretty cool. As you can see, you have something really interesting. This is it for the metable effects, and this is it for the post effects panel. Hope you like it, guys. This is the end of the first half of the overview. So let's continue in a second video, and see you there. The delay effector in the animate tab has been completely revamped in this version 3. So let me show you what it does now. I've created a simple text layer with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 numbers. Let's select it, and as you can see, it's compatible. All the effectors are compatible with native After Effects text layers now. So if I click on this, and if I apply a delay effector, as you can see, it's working, because if I play, I can see that there is an animation. If you don't want the color to be changed by the MoglyphFX, you just have to untick the little fx guy here next to the Moglyph text, right? If you do so, you will retrieve the color you had put it in your text layer. So, what is the new delay effector? As you can see, if I twill down the effector subgroup, I have now just the strength value here and the animation that is animated. As you can see, there are some keyframes and there is an expression now. So if I click on my layer and click on U on my keyboard, sorry, if I type U on my keyboard, I see that I have now some keyframes, 2 keyframes here. It was already the case with the older version of the delay effector, but yeah, you retrieve your keyframes here. And what's really new is this new animation order subgroup here and this new animation remapping here. Let me show you what the animation order subgroup does. So twirl down this, and now while before you could only choose to animate the clones sequentially from the first to the latest or from the latest to the first, you have now a complete control over that. So I have to thank Matthew Vlasinski, which is a friend of mine that gave me the permission to reproduce the principle behind the text evo really cool script that he has created. It's available as a name your own price product on aescripts.com as well. And yeah, I've created the same kind of drop-down list to choose the order that you want your clones to be animated, okay, which is pretty cool. So by default, it's animated from the first to the last, as you can see. The greenish color here is due to the effector delay. I will leave it for by now. But so it's from first to latest. And this is because the order by default is on ID order. So each clone, each glyph in a font has its own ID, and this is the ID number 0, the ID number 1, 2, 3, etc. So the ID order is the normal order. If I want the animation to happen in the inverted sequence, I have to go in the list and just choose reverse. And now if I click play, as you can see, the animation has been reversed. Okay, now the animation starts from the latest clone to the first one. And what's really cool and what's really new in this version 3 of MoglyphFX is that now you can choose all the kinds of sequence. So now you can choose outwards. The outwards let you animate from the middle clone towards the outwards. So in this case, the 5 is the exact center of my sequence. Okay, pretty cool. And you can do the exact opposite just by selecting inward. And in this case, inward will animate all the clones from outwards toward the center. So the 1 and the 9 numbers will be animated first, and they will go towards the 5 one, okay, which is pretty cool too. Okay, so this is it for the new order drop-down list. Oh, no, sorry, you can randomize the order as well. So if I choose random, as you can see, now it has been completely randomized. And of course, you can change the randomness thanks to the random source here. So each time I change this value here, the randomness will differ, okay? And there is a last thing that I want to show you in the drop-down list, which is called from ID, just like in Text Evo. Again, thanks to Matteo Glasinski. So from ID, let's say I have to animate my clones from the number 3 here. So I just select my from ID, and from ID I will choose the number 3 here. And of course, this is not based on what it's written in the text layer, but it's based on the ID. So sorry for previously I told you that it was the ID number 0, but it's ID number 1, 2, 3, etc. So the ID number 3 is exactly this one. So now, as you can see, the first clone that is animated is the 3 number, okay, which is pretty cool. If I wanted the 7 to be animated first, I could just type 7, and of course it will work with any kind of cloner, and if shapes as well. So if you have a sequence of shapes in a cloner, you can have the control over it as well. It's not, you are not mandatory, you are not bound to use some text layers, of course. So now, as you can see, the 7 is animated first. So this is cool, and of course you retry the offset, which is an option you had before. The 2 here means that you have exactly 2 frames from one clone to the other. So if I want exactly 1 second before each number animate depending to the other clones, I just have to put 25 in my case, because in Europe, I'm in Europe. I'm French, so in our case, this is 25 image per second. So if I do so, as you can see, I have to wait the first second to see my other clones animated. Okay, so this is what this offset stands for. Okay, you can have some really little values like this one, for example, and now you have a little really subtle difference. And yeah, this is it for this animation order here. Pretty great. Another really cool thing in this new version 3 of MoglyphFX with the delay effector is that new subgroup called animation remapping. This is a really powerful new feature. Let me show you what I mean. It comes from Cinema 4D. I've tried to mimic what happens with the fields in Cinema 4D, which are pretty cool if you do not know them. So if you twill down the animation remapping here, you have now a new drop-down list called remapping preset. And what it does is it will remap the keyframes that you have in the animation property here, that is animated. Okay, so this is why you have an expression on top of that. So don't remove this expression, because otherwise you will lose the ability to remap thanks to the presets. But of course, if you don't want to use this preset and apply your own expression, you can still do that. So you could use, for example, you could use ease and wheeze or Dwick, for example, with its spring feature, and it will of course be animated with some overshoot, for example, which could be pretty cool in some cases. But again, keep in mind that if you do so, it will replace the expression I've put in that, and you won't be able to use this drop-down list anymore. So if you leave that at its ease, you can see that by default, this is an elastic preset. And this is why you have this nice animation here with a nice springy motion. But you can do other kind of animation. So if I click on my animation and see what happens in the graph editor, as you can see, the elastic does exactly that. So just to let you know, if there is a kind of easing at the beginning of my motion here, this is because by default the first keyframe here has an easy ease on it. So I will undo that. I will command click on it to have a linear keyframes, and now if I see my graph editor, I have this, so it will help me demonstrate what other kind of preset do. So if I now choose another kind of preset, let's say bounce here, just see what happens. So if I click on animation, as you can see now, I don't have an overshoot anymore. I have a bouncing animation. So if I play my animation, as you can see, you have some bouncing effects. And if you want to change the overall look of this animation, you can just deploy the corresponding subgroup, which is elastic and bounce options here. They are available for both the elastic and bounce here because it's based on the number of bounces. So if I twill down that, you have the spring per second. And if you change the value here, let's say something like that, I have now a bounce that is more visible, right? You have some bigger bounces. And you can choose to invert the bounce if you want your clone to be animated and not bounce on the floor, for example, but bounce back like this. So I can check this option, and again, you can see now that it has been inverted. So it gives me this animation instead. So this is pretty cool, and if I have even more, okay. an even more nervous animation just by make it faster here. I have, yeah, this kind of nice back motion, bounce motion. And again, if I uncheck this option, I have something that kind of bounces on a floor, for example. So this is it for the elastic and bounce options. Let me continue what you can do with the smooth option. For the smooth preset, if I click on it, and if I deploy the corresponding subgroup, which is called smooth options, if I click on my animation here, as you can see, if I zoom a bit in my timeline, yeah, you can see that by default, even if you have two linear keyframes, it will do its best to make your animation smooth. So it's kind of exponential. So you have something pretty smooth. And by default, the smooth in and the smooth out are both activated. So if I deactivate, disactivate this one, as you can see, there isn't any smooth in now, and you have something that does this nice smooth out animation instead. And you can of course do the opposite by just click on this one and tick off this smooth out animation, and now you have a smooth in animation. Okay, so this is more visible if you have a slower motion. So let me increase the time between these two keyframes, and let's smooth out and uncheck the smoothing, and you can play with another value which is called smooth iteration. By default it's 3, but you can go up to 5 or 6. I don't, no, 5. 5 is the maximum here. And 5 will give you a really nice kind of exponential damping here. So if I do that, yeah, this is really cool. And again, you just have to add some more keyframes to recreate some motion here. So you have something like this, which is pretty cool and pretty stylish in motion design. So I love this new smooth animation. So this is it for the smooth preset. I will delete these options here, and I will make my initial motion faster. Okay, and I will choose now the flicker animation. So let's twirl up this one and twirl down this flicker options and choose the flicker options. So what does the flicker option create? So it will do exactly this. As you can see, you have a value, the animation value that starts from 0 to 100, but it will just clump the values and make annotations to do some kind of hard animation, okay, which gives you this result. And in this case, my effector delay that pushes my numbers toward the y-axis isn't the best way to demonstrate this. I use usually the flicker preset for making my clones appearing in a kind of flickering and glitchy way. And to do so, you just have to twirl down the parameters group, go to transform. I don't want the default position Y, so I will zero this out. And I just want to make my clones visible and not visible in their first state. So visibility, I will push it to 0. And as you can see, it doesn't work that well because the way that I've created this is due to some limitations of the text layers in After Effects. So I had to cheat a bit. And in order for me to have a fully invisible state, I have to uncheck checkbox I've created here in the animation remapping. It's called compensate clumped values. And if I do so, as you can see, my clones will disappear, and now my visibility acts like it should do normally. Okay, and as you can see, the color works in a really more correct way as well. So this is due to this compensate clumped values here. So again, if I check this, the value of the color doesn't work pretty well, and the opacity, the visibility won't work that well neither. But again, if I click on this, it will work perfectly. So now let me show you what it does. Okay, cool. As you can see, you have some kind of flickering animation, which are pretty cool. I use it all the time with the visibility in order to make some interesting techie or futuristic appearance for my cloners or for my text layers. And to make this even more understandable, I will play with the animation order, and I will not offset in time the text. So what it creates here, it just take a look at this. So by default, the delay effector make my clones invisible. So as you can see, by default, my delay effector acts at 100% on all my clones. This is this peak here, and as soon as I go there, it will make my delay effector 0% strength, and again a bit later it will be 100% and 0% and 100% and 0%. So it's really cool in order for you to create some really kind of interesting arrivings for the text and glyph layers. And you have exactly 3 cycles, because in the flicker options here you have this number of flicking cycles here. This is 3 by default, so you have this first cycle, second cycle, and third cycle. But you can choose to have less if you prefer. So if I choose 2, as you can see, you have now exactly 1 cycle and 2 cycle, which gives you something less nervous, but you have exactly 1 and 2 turn off cycles. So and I can increase, of course, this value. So if I choose 4, for example, I have something that is really speedy, really nervous, and it can create a futuristic and glitchy arriving, which is pretty cool. So I love this flicker new animation. And let's continue with another one called quantize. So in this case, I will put back the 100 value in visibility, and I will put back the value on position Y, for example. I will put 200 here, and I will choose the quantize option here. So what does the quantize option? Well, it does exactly that. This is almost like you had created some in-betweens and toggled them, the keyframes on old keyframes. This is cool because it gives you a nice kind of stop motion look. You have this kind of remapping in fields in Cinema 4D, so it's pretty cool to have that there. And of course, you have a corresponding subgroup there that is called quantize steps. And by default, if you click on your animation, you have exactly 2 steps, okay? Because you have 2 in this quantize steps. But if you want some more in-betweens, you can just type that, for example, let's add 3 steps, and you have now exactly 3 old keyframes there, okay? And this is really cool for this kind of stop effects animation. And what's cool is that you can benefit from that and benefits from the offset here. Because if you had just added a posterized time effect, it would have worked, but you won't have the ability to play with the offset. While here, you apply this exact animation shame for any clone, and you can offset them sequentially. So if I make play here, you have this really nice animation with a post effect, with a quantize effect on it. And yeah, this is pretty cool. So this is it, and the last one in the drop-down menu just stands for none, and none means that if you choose none, it means that you just have the possibility to play with the keyframe value manually, and you of course can easy ease your values and make some something like this, for example, and create as much keyframe as you want and play with the graph editor. So what none means is just that the expression doesn't work anymore, and you just have a normal standard animated property here that you can tweak in the graph editor, for example. Okay, so this is great. And by the way, this is what I do often is just to yeah, I can just overshoot my animation just by doing something like this. And as you can see, just by choosing none and yeah, something like this, for example, I can just have kind of an anticipation here, because yeah, I can have a negative value here with the tangent. So if I do so, I have kind of an anticipation motion. Okay, as you can see, it works. And this is, and you can of course have an overshoot over your animation. And yeah, as you can see, the anticipation works, but in this case, the overshoot won't work. As you can see, the 7th doesn't overshoot in the position. So in this way, as you can see, all this part here of the graph won't work correctly. And this is because, don't forget that we have unchecked the value here of the compensate clumped values. And it works pretty well for opacity, the visibility here, and the color. But if you want to overshoot more than 100% value here for the position, for example, or for the scale, you'll have to click these things back here. So I will tick that on back. And now, as you can see, the overshoot works. Okay, so it gives me a really nice anticipation and overshoot. So this is it for the new delay effector. As you can see, it's way more powerful and way more flexible than before. So I really love that. It's pretty cool. Another neat new feature in version 3 is the ability to animate your clones based on rows and not based on glyphs. So if you create a multi-line cloner or a multi-line text, let's create, for example, a simple cloner in a grid mode, like this one. And as you can see, this is a multi-line setup. And by default, if I, let's say, animate it with a random effector, as you can see, by default, it will animate based on glyphs. So each glyph is differently animated. But if I undo that, and if now I check this option here, which is new in version 3 again, and as you can see, the name of the sub-panel called FX Delay Formula Random Step Options means that this option is available only for these 4 effectors, and random is one of them. So if I select my cloner, click on this guy here, and now if I reapply my random effector, as you can see, now my animation is based on rows and not on glyphs. So it can be useful in a lot of situations. So yeah, this is pretty cool to have it right there. And this is it for the random effector. Let me show you what it does with some other situation and other effectors. So let's undo this. Okay, so I will test it now with the delay effector. So without the delay effector, as you can see, you have an animation based on glyphs again. As you can see, there is kind of a wave animation here. But if I undo this, and if I click on rows-based animation, I click on delay, now all my clones move based on rows. Okay, so again, this is pretty cool. Let's undo this again. So I have now nothing except my Moglyph Cloner effect. And let's try with the formula effector. So again, let's uncheck this, click on formula, and as you can see, the formula effector creates a nice wavy animation by default, and this is based on glyphs. But what if I choose the rows-based animation instead? And just to let you know and to show you how it works, you don't have to create this before clicking the effector. You can change this after a while just by selecting your effector. So in my case, I will select the effector formula effect. And if you have selected such an effector effect, you can after a while click on this one. And as you can see, it will instantly change the behavior of your effector. So now, as you can see, the wavy animation from the formula is based on rows and not on glyphs. So again, I can choose that on the fly after a while. So this is a pretty neat addition too. So let's remove this effector thanks to the remove effect. And let's demonstrate the last effector that can benefit from this new addition and apply the step effector this time. So by default, if I do that, again, each clone will be affected individually. Okay, which is, this is based on glyphs. But if I select my effector and click on this guy here, as you can see, it has changed the way it behaves. Okay, so now each line, each row is affected by the step effector line by line. So again, this is a great addition. It can be useful in a lot of situations, and I needed it in a real project, so I'm glad it's here right now. By the way, I wanted to show you that this new option here works with native text layers too, so you are not bound to use Moglyph cloners. So if I select this multi-line text, I can just, as you can see, create a delay effector on it. If you don't want the color to be affected, just uncheck this little FX guy here. As you can see, it works now. And the delay effector colorize them because you have in the style here, you can colorize them as well. So I will give a white color as well. And now, as you can see, the delay effector by default, since my checkbox isn't ticked on, will affect all my characters, character by character. But if I select now my effector delay and click on this guy here, as you can see now, you have animated your text, just like in other tools like Text Evo, for example. So this is pretty cool because you can now play with the effector delay option with transform, for example, and you can play with this option here. Sorry, not the anchor point, but the position, for example. And let's position it outside. And you have now a nice animation, a nice in animation, sorry, for your animated multi-line text. So here we go. As you can see, it works pretty well. And yeah, this is a way to animate your paragraphs really nicely, thanks to this new rows-based animation option. For the sake of this new tutorial section about the new Loopable Wiggle mod from the random Effector, I've rebuilt the metable radial example from previous sections. So as you can see, if I play with the ring radius, I can decrease it and recreate this blobby, really cool style thanks to the MetableFX that again comes from there. And if I decrease the ring radius to just obtain a simple dot here, actually let's remove the layer controls. Okay, so now if I select my Moglyph Cloner, let's twirl up all this. So if I select my Moglyph Cloner here, and if I apply the random Effector, as you can see, by default, let's actually undo this and be sure to uncheck this rows-based animation option from the previous section, because it will animate all your glyphs based on lines, and of course a radial cloner is just one single line, so it won't work that well. So I've undone this and I will reapply this, but before I will untick this option. Okay, so now if I reapply this one, as you can see, I have all my glyphs that are at the same place, so I can't see them for the moment. But if I twirl down this Effector random here, if I play with the parameters, transform, if I zero out the scale, and if I play with the position Y, as you can see, you have something really cool that is happening here. And if I press play, as you can see, the wiggle animates all my clones, and this is perfectly looped based on the comp duration. So if I see what's happening here, as you can see, from there, the very first frame of my animation to there at the very end of my animation, it loops perfectly. Even if I push out the values here, as you can see, it will animate in a perfect loop. So this is pretty cool, because before you didn't have this ability. And this is thanks to the new mode that is called random mode, that is in the Effector subgroup here. In the version 2 and version 1 of Moglyph, you didn't have this new wiggle mode here. You just had the random, Gaussian, and noise modes, and now this wiggle mode is brand new. So this wiggle mode allows you to loop your animation from the very first frame of your composition to the very end of your composition. So whichever duration you have, so let's change this, for example, to 3 seconds. As you can see, the animation will update, and now if I press play, as you can see, the wiggle still animates, and this is perfectly looped. So this is pretty cool. So yeah, this is a really little addition, but I find it really useful in some cases. So I'm glad you have it now, and this is called the wiggle mode. It's the one chosen by default, but again, you can select anything you want, and for example, you can animate the random, which is like a hard animated way with a kind of a posterized time effect. Okay, and you have all the previous animation modes plus this new wiggle mode, which is again the mode that is available by default. In version 3 of MoglyphFX, you have now the ability to change some of the default settings. So this is possible thanks to the new button called Change Settings here. And if you want to change, for example, the fill color, the fill stroke of your cloners, and even the selected default font for your cloners, And if you want some of these guys here to be checked on by default, or if you want to have a specific remapping option for the delay effector, yeah, you will find them all in the change settings here. So if I click on this guy here, as you can see, you retrieve the generate tab, the animate tab. Okay, these are both corresponding, of course, to the tabs that are right there. And in the generate tab, you have the fill color that, of course, corresponds to this guy here, and the stroke color. And you have the fonts choose again as well. So again, if I click on change settings, the color by default is this greenish little color here, but if you want to, you can have, let's say, for example, this color here. You have to type in or copy and paste an hexa color decimal. So this is the kind of code you have to type in. And you have the stroke color. So if I want this to be this, for example, I can have the exact inverse of this one. And I can choose another font. For example, I can choose this nice Moglyph futuristic HUD that I didn't demonstrate before. So actually, this is another new font in the version 3. And this one is pretty cool too. So let's choose this one by default. And in the animate tab, you can check some of the options by default. So I advise you to not change them, but if you want to, you have this ability. But what's great is the ability to change the remapping option, the remapping preset for the delay effector. And by default, this is on elastic, which gives you the nice springy, nice overshoot, springy animations in your clones. But there is one remapping preset that I really love that is called Flicker, and I've shown how it works in the dedicated section at the beginning of the part 2. So again, please check this if you didn't understand what it's about. So if I click on Flicker instead of Elastic, and because I've chosen Moglyph Futuristic HUD, and you will see that it will do a great job with this case here. So if I save settings, I am alerted. There is a pop-up that appears that tells me to close the panel and reopen it later. So, okay. And I will right-click on the panel and close this panel. And again, I will search for it in the window menu. I will click on MoglyphFX J6 bin again. Of course, it will reappear at its same place because I've docked it in my layout before. Okay, and as you can see now, the color for the fill color and the fill stroke have changed, as well as Moglyph Futuristic HUD, which is now the default font. And if I click on animate, you won't see the change in the default at the moment, but let's create, let's say, a honeycomb cloner. And as you can see, by default, you have a little square that comes with the futuristic HUD font. And if I click on add new glyph here, as you can see, the default font now is this really nice guy here. And this is the little square, which is visible here. And of course, I can choose anything from this glyph panel. So let's populate my cloner actually with some nice new UI futuristic HUD glyphs. So, for example, this one, and this nice target, for example, and maybe this bucket, render bucket here, and maybe yeah, this guy here. Okay, so I've got some nice glyphs that are arranged in a honeycomb cloner, and of course you can change the shape from any glyph thanks to the number of each glyph pseudo effect. But let's stay with this for example for the moment, and I will increase the gap in X and Y. Okay, and as you can see, because I've changed the settings for the fill color, they are all pink, right? So, and if I play with the stroke thickness, as you can see, the color of the stroke is now this pure red, thanks to this value here. And again, both have been changed thanks to the change settings option. Okay? So let's undo this because I don't want actually a stroke. And just to demonstrate what's possible with these change settings and this new delay effector remapping option that I've changed to flicker, let's select my Moglyph Cloner and just apply the delay here. And as you can see, instantly, without doing anything else, if I press play, I have this really cool animation here that is that has been created in just with the click of one button. And this is pretty cool because you can imagine what it can give in a futuristic HUD wheel project, because any glyph here in my setup will appear with this flickering animation in opacity. So all the settings that I've shown in the previous section when I talk about the delay effector have been completely adapted to fit my needs, because I've chosen the flicker new remapping preset instead of elastic. So it's a smart option that has been changed for you. So you don't even have to drill down the parameters, transform, and you don't have to play with the position, don't have to play with the visibility, and the compensate column values have been unchecked as well for you. So you can, for example, just play with the animation order, and you can, for example, choose the random, and why not play with the symmetry, for example, and check these on, for example. And yeah, just by doing so, you have now a really cool animation that has been created in just a matter of seconds, right? So this is pretty cool. And yeah, I really love this nice new possibility to just change your settings and particularly to change the mode from the delay effector. So this is it for the change settings. Hope you guys will like it as well as I do. With this version 3, you have now 1,500 different glyphs to choose from. So I know and I understand that it's not that easy to choose the right shape depending of your needs. And even for me, who have designed all these fonts here, sometimes I have some difficulties to choose the right font and the right glyph for my project. This is why I've created a new document that you can download directly from the aescripts.com website. So let me show you what it does. Okay, once you are on the aescripts.com Moglyph webpage, you can scroll down to the very end of the page, and you'll find just at the top of the slider here, you will find this new MoglyphFX fonts glyph appendix arrange link. And if you click on this guy here, you will download this on your hard drive. And I've already downloaded this on my hard drive. So once you open this guy here, you will end up with this new PDF. It's a really nice document that I've created for you, and that will allow you to keep track of all the fonts and all their glyph by their order of appearance, depending of each new release or number version. And yeah, you will retrieve all the fonts I've provided in MoglyphFX since the initial release. So this is a really nice kind of catalog. So please read the introduction if you download it, because I've written a few advices, a few tips. But basically, yeah, you will find all the fonts name at the top of each page. And again, this is ordered by order of appearance in the different releases of the product. So this was one of the first font here, the basic geometry. And the next pages will show you all the fonts that have been added later. And in the green circles here, you will find the number, the exact number of which version of MoglyphFX the specific font has been delivered into. So, for example, if I choose the Moglyph Memphis pattern, I can see that it has come with the 1.8 version of MoglyphFX. Okay, it helps you keep track of each version number. And what's great about this catalog is that if I let's say if I choose the UI elements, for example, I can zoom a bit in this catalog, and it's all vector shapes, so you can really zoom in and have these nice shapes, these nice drawn shapes. So let's say if you have to animate a website, for example, this is maybe the font you will use in Moglyph, right? And just to let you know, the very first character that each first glyph in the fonts are corresponding to are the exclamation point here. So if you type the exclamation point with the Moglyph UI element font chosen in your text layer in After Effects, you will end up with this nice cursor here. And of course, it can be useful in various situations, especially if you had to animate some motion piece that shows some websites. So yeah, and all the fonts are the same corresponding glyphs here. So the exclamation point is always the first glyph in your glyph panel. So yeah, it helps you type directly each shape manually with your keyboard. So if, for example, you need to create this check sign here for whichever case you want, just type this uppercase B on your keyboard, and you will have directly this shape here with this font selected in your character panel, which is pretty great and pretty useful. And by the way, you can use these fonts since this is a regular system font. You can use them in other applications as well. So you can use these fonts with, for example, Adobe Illustrator 2. And this is what I do usually in order for me to make my design choices and to storyboard my motion pieces. So yeah, this is pretty cool to have this PDF document at next to me when I make some design choices with MoglyphFX. So this is a pretty nice addition, and of course you can download this at any time, any point, at any moment. Just go to the MoglyphFX product page, go to the very bottom of the page, and download it by clicking this orange link there. despite this huge library of available glyphs, sometimes you may not find the glyph shape you need for your project, and I totally get it. Of course, I can't create all the possible shapes that you would need in any cases, and this is why I've added in the Help Mat panel of my product a new font request button here. And as a reminder from the version 2, you have a custom font creation assistant there that allows you to create your own glyph fonts for MoglyphFX. But I can understand that learning to do so isn't that simple and isn't that fast to create. So I get it. But yeah, in this case, just contact me, and this is what this font request button will allow you to do, because if you go just to info and listens, you have get support contact here, but you will just open a support ticket, and this is different from this font request button, because if I click on this, you will end up with this model window, and you will mostly have my personal email address. So if you need anything for Moglyph, like for example, someone to create a custom font for you, well, you can just contact me directly, and I will come back to you with some ideas and with some prices. Just contact me and I will study your requests as soon as possible. So, and yeah, for anything else related to MoglyphFX, don't hesitate to contact me as well. I will be glad to reply to your questions and to see what you guys will create with my Moglyph toolset, which is for me the most useful and most powerful tools of mine. So yeah, this is it. This is the end of this version 3 video tutorial. Again, sorry for the long duration, and I hope you guys will like all these changes. And yeah, see you guys.